Welcome to the Valley Politics History Interviews. I'm Terry Christensen. Something happened in San Jose in 1981 that had repercussions across the country. City workers went on strike for comparable worth pay and won. Comparable worth is about equal pay for workers in the sorts of jobs that are predominantly held by women as compared to pay for those in jobs that are predominantly held by men. So, not equal pay for the same jobs, but for jobs of equivalent responsibility. Female city employees, joined by their male colleagues, organized and went on strike at a time when women were a majority on the city council and San Jose had been declared the feminist capital of America, which surely aided their cause. We aired our interview with Joan Goddard and Patt Curia, two of the young leaders of the 1981 strike, in 2019. Here's that interview. Joan Goddard, Patt Curia, welcome to Valley Politics. We're going to talk about a strike that happened in 1981, city employees, and had repercussions way beyond San Jose, so we'll get to that. But first of all, what were you two doing in 1980 before the strike?
We were both senior librarians at the San Jose Public Library, which is a department of the city, and Pat was in charge of a department at the main library, and I was in charge of a branch library.
Most people don't think of librarians as very likely strikers, but the librarians were a core of the strike at that time, right? Pat, what was the strike about? What led to the strike?
Well, it started really in 1979 when the Jim Alloway, who was the
city manager,
yeah. A new city manager, he was concerned about pay inequities amongst the managers. And because he was new, he was trying to, cultivate their support. So he recommended to the city council that they have a study of jobs, not particularly because of pay, female or gender issues, but just to get the salaries up. And so the city council agreed, and then we were very interested because Maxine Jenkins, who was our AFSCME representative.
AFSCME is the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees.
Very good,
right?
Yes.
Very good.
Yeah.
And she heard about it, and she felt that the non-management classifications should be evaluated at the same time. And once we heard that, there had been ripples throughout the library nationally about pay equity. And so the librarians were kind of ahead of the game and wanting to be studied. And we had formed an organization called CLAW, which is Concerned Library Activist Workers. And it had two functions, really, to promote library services in the community and at city council, but also to I want to say, infiltrate the union and make sure that pay equity became a topic. So when the strike occurred, and this is after a year and a half, and we can get into that, there were really two issues, because we were both on the negotiating team, and the one issue was the city wasn't offering enough cost of living adjustments. So that eliminated a lot of supporters right there, or that rather gathered a lot of supporters. And then
so that's everybody across the board.
Yeah, that's everybody. And then the study had been presented, and we saw the inequities between our jobs and other people's jobs within the non-management, but also the managers our manager had received a 24% increase, our direct lead. So a lot of people were upset, almost everybody in the union. And so the strike was kind of a foregone conclusion unless the city and which was the feminist capital of the world. I'm sure you're going to bring that up. So it took a long time and a lot of starts and stops, but July 5th is when
1981.
1981.
Well, let's backtrack a little bit. So feminist capital of at least the United States, because we had a female mayor, first female mayor of a major American city, that was Janet Gray Hayes, elected in '74. And by 1980, when this started to happen, 7 out of 11 council members, the 7 including the mayor, were women. And there was a majority of women on the County Board of Supervisors and a couple of women representing the area in the state legislature. And women's groups, National Women's Political Caucus, now were very active as well. So that helped build a base of support for what you did. But
You think?
you'd think. You talked about pay equity. This was also called comparable worth. So let's define what that meant. Joan, can you do that for us?
Comparable worth is comparing women's work jobs and men's work jobs.
Kind of apples to oranges.
Not well, yes, because exactly, and we talked about that because you can compare apples and oranges.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things they have, categories of things they have in common, and that was true. And Pat was one of the people analyzing the job, so she can talk more about that. But the idea is that no matter who has a women's work job, most of the people doing that work are women.
And that would be librarians, clerical workers.
And includes, which include men, but
Yeah,
not in the same
predominantly
numbers
women,
as construction inspectors and surveyors
Right.
and a lot of automobile repair people, et cetera, where it's mostly men, even though there may be some women.
Well, was there tension within the union over this? Because everybody wanted a pay raise, right? But
Right.
there
Well,
were
it
a lot of
built
men
up-
in the union.
Yeah. It built up gradually, so
Yeah.
they had a chance to learn about it and to think about it
And they
to think
came
about
along?
their families.
Well, yeah.
Their sisters, their wives,
So
their
they
cousins. et
eventually
cetera,
were
et cetera.
supportive of, they were out on
And-
strike too?
Yes, they did, and they went on strike. I was in front of City Hall and also at the airport and the sewer treatment plant striking or picketing. And so it was great because there was support from other unions. So the Teamsters.
Private sector unions.
Well, yes, the
Yeah,
Teamsters wouldn't
Teamsters.
cross the line,
Yeah.
and that helped move the city along because when you start shutting down operations in the airport, and that's serious.
Who were the opponents? Who was objecting to the strike?
Well, I think people objecting to the issue would be
That's a better way to put it, yeah.
business.
Well, I know the
And
Chamber of
nationally.
Commerce was.
Yeah, I mean, we were reading articles about from the New York Times saying, this is going to destroy business throughout the world, and of course that hasn't happened.
Wall Street Journal did an editorial, Forbes magazine, Chamber of Commerce, League of California Cities, National League of Cities. There actually was a lot of opposition because this really was shaking up the whole pay structure that could extend beyond
Government.
public sector, to private sector.
But it also, also other governments, the problem is there wasn't a lot of money. This was, post Prop 13.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
So budgets were tight.
Yeah.
And we were asking for a lot because the adjustments, we got a 15% increase over 2 years based on comparable worth. That's on top of
And that was only the beginning
and that was
of what we were owed.
Strike took 9 days, and then you succeeded. The city council voted 8-3 in favor of the union demands. So it was settled.
Well, it was
which
negotiated.
It was negotiated.
Yeah, there were
Thank you.
compromises made on both sides.
Okay, but basically you won.
Well,
Come on.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we won.
Yeah, it was a big deal. You won. What made that happen? To what do you attribute the success?
Well, I think
It was It was among the first of any city or county or state to do this.
Right.
So
It
really
was
breaking new ground.
It was the first strike over this issue
Yeah.
in the United States. And other places had done projects where they had looked at comparable worth, and sometimes they had made some salary adjustments, but they were fairly small. A school district in Southern California, and either at the same time or shortly before, Minnesota did a great job and is still doing a great job because they require checking on this every 2 to 3 years, making a report, making continued salary adjustments if necessary, which is very important because after all of this time since 1981 and even since late 1980s, when we finished getting adjustments, we get salary increases that are percentages. And so unless the salaries are the same, the lower paid salary in the same kind level of job is going to get a lower salary increase than the higher paid jobs in that level of work, and the gap widens again, which is what they're avoiding in Minnesota.
So the issue wasn't resolved ultimately. It's an ongoing challenge, right? But that said, this was a big deal in
Yes.
1981.
Definitely.
And it was setting a new precedent that could lead to further adjustments. So I still want to take you back to, why did you win?
One of the reasons, perhaps, the management had gotten their big increases. And so our library management was very supportive of us going on strike. And there was no repercussions when we came back. But I think it was kind of embarrassing, you know, for the city to be the feminist capital, and yet, you know, you can get fired. We all got letters, and we had one of our rallies where we all burnt our termination letters, and so.
Weren't you scared?
You know,
You were.
I didn't have
Maybe,
any. I didn't
you
have
were
a family.
maybe you were too young to be scared.
But well, I was very
we were in our
sympathetic
30s.
to the secretaries and the single moms. It is scary because we were representing them, and we could have said no, we're going to hang out longer and get more. And I think the negotiating team felt that this was good enough.
Good beginning.
This is
Yeah.
the beginning, and the city, I think, felt that the same. And what did you say, Franklin? The head negotiator, he described our strike as very classy.
Yes, right. The city's negotiator said that we had a classy strike, and that was based on a lot of experience through his years.
So
I checked and I noticed the Mercury News supported the goals of the
Great.
strike.
Wonderful.
And that,
Back then.
we need to remember, that was a new Mercury News. If the strike had happened before 1977, with the old management, they would have been way on the other side.
Yeah.
well, I was reading the news, and all the airport controllers were fired by Ronald Reagan a month
Yeah, that was
later.
happening too.
So
Yeah.
it happened at the right time,
Yeah.
and not later.
Right time,
Right,
right place,
right people.
right political environment,
Right.
right leaders, and workers that were united.
That's
And
it.
that's really what it takes. It's
Right.
not just the leaders.
And it had built up over a period of time.
Yeah.
So that it wasn't as if this was something that happened overnight.
And it's a fairness issue too.
Absolutely. And Pat, Curia, and Joan Goddard, we're out of time.
Oh.
But thank you very much for filling us in on this important little piece of history in San Jose that did have repercussions way beyond San Jose. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
For other interviews with the leaders and activists who shaped the history of San Jose and Santa Clara County, look for the Valley Politics History Interviews on YouTube. I'm Terry Christensen. Thanks for watching.